Lien Arden stands at the edge of the ceremonial circle, his heart hammering against his ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. At 23, he possesses the delicate beauty typical of his Omega status soft features. Gentle eyes the color of forest moss, and hair that catches the firelight like spun gold. But there's something different about Lien, something that sets him apart from other Omegas. While they present themselves with downcast eyes and submissive postures, Lien holds his head high, his gaze direct and unwavering. This quiet confidence has always made him stand out, though tonight he wonders if perhaps it's been his greatest mistake. The pack has gathered in full ceremony, nearly 200 wolves in their human forms arranged in concentric circles around the sacred bonfire. The flames dance toward the star-scattered sky, casting shifting shadows across the faces of the assembled wolves. Ancient songs echo through the forest, sung in the old tongue that speaks of bonds and destiny, of Alpha and Omega, of the moon goddess who weaves the invisible threads that connect soul to soul. At the center of it all stands Kale Viren, the alpha heir whose very presence seems to command the attention of every wolf present. He's everything an alpha should be, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that seems to absorb the firelight and eyes like winter storms. His features are sharp and aristocratic, befitting his status as the future leader of the pack. When he moves, it's with the fluid grace of a born predator, every step calculated and purposeful. The pack looks to him not just with respect, but with the kind of reverence reserved for those who hold the power of life and death in their hands. For months, Lien has felt the pull between them growing stronger, the invisible thread that connects fated mates becoming more insistent with each passing day. In quiet moments, when their eyes would meet across the pack dining hall or during training sessions, Lien could swear he saw something flicker in Kale's gaze. Recognition, desire, perhaps even tenderness. The bond between them hums with potential, a song that only they can hear, promising a future of shared strength and unshakable unity. The pack elder raises his gnarled staff, and the assembled wolves fall silent. His voice carries the weight of centuries as he speaks the ritual words that have been unchanged since the founding of their pack. Tonight, under the blessing of the full moon, those called by fate will step forward and claim their eternal bonds. Let no wolf stand between what the moon goddess has decreed. Let the worthy be joined, and let the unworthy be cast aside. Lien feels the pull intensify, every instinct screaming at him to step forward, to claim what is rightfully his. The silver thread of their bond becomes visible in the moonlight, stretching between him and Kale like spun starlight. This is the moment he has dreamed of since he first understood what it meant to have a fated mate. This is when his life truly begins. He takes a step forward, then another, his bare feet silent on the soft earth. Around the circle, other wolves are moving too, drawn to their destined partners by forces older than memory. The air is thick with anticipation, with the electric charge that comes when destiny is about to be fulfilled. Lien's heart races not with fear but with joy, with the absolute certainty that everything in his life has led to this moment. Kale's eyes find his across the fire, and for a heartbeat, the world seems to hold its breath. Lien sees something flicker in those storm-gray depths, a moment of what might be recognition, might be longing. The bond between them pulses with warmth, with the promise of everything they could be together. Lien reaches out his hand, fingers trembling not with nervousness but with anticipation. And then, with a sound like breaking glass, everything shatters. I will not bind myself to a submissive creature who grovels for scraps of affection. Kale's voice booms across the grove, loud enough for every wolf present to hear. Each word hits Lien like a physical blow, more devastating than any wound he's ever suffered. You are not worthy to stand beside an alpha. You are not worthy to carry the future of this pack. The world seems to slow as Lien watches Kale reach up and grasp the silver thread that connects them. His face is hard, emotionless, as if the tender moment they had shared just seconds before had never existed. With one sharp, deliberate motion, he tears the bond apart and casts the broken pieces into the fire. The flames consume them greedily, leaving nothing but ash and the acrid smell of burned magic. The pain is indescribable. It feels like someone has reached into Lien's chest and ripped out half his soul, leaving jagged edges that burn with every breath. The severed bond doesn't just hurt, it leaves him feeling fundamentally wrong, as if part of his very essence has been torn away. Through the pack link, he can feel the shock and pity of the gathered wolves, their emotions crashing over him in waves. Some whisper among themselves, others stare openly at his humiliation. The other bonding pairs continue their ceremonies as if nothing has happened, but Lien stands frozen in the center of it all, broken and bleeding inside. Lien. The elder's voice is gentle, but underneath it, Lien can hear the disappointment, the resignation of someone who has seen this tragedy play out before. Return to your place. The moon goddess works in mysterious ways. Somehow, Lien manages to move his feet, to step back from the fire and fade into the shadows at the edge of the grove. He watches as Kale stands tall and proud, unmarked by what he has just done. While Lien feels like he's dying from the inside out, the ceremony continues around him, but he is no longer part of it. He is nothing, a rejected Omega, a failed mate, an embarrassment to his pack. The days that follow blur together in a haze of shame and isolation. Word of his rejection spreads through the pack like wildfire, and everywhere he goes, Lien feels the weight of their judgment. Pack members who once treated him with casual friendliness now avoid his gaze, crossing to the other side of paths to avoid having to acknowledge him. The Omega Quarters, once a place of camaraderie and gentle teasing, becomes a minefield of whispered conversations that stop when he enters and sympathetic looks that somehow hurt worse than outright hostility. The Pack Council meets in emergency session to discuss what to do with him. An Omega without a mate, especially one who has been publicly rejected, is seen as unstable, potentially dangerous. The old traditions are clear about such cases, and none of them offer Lien much hope for his future. You bring dishonor to our bloodline, his pack leader tells him bluntly when Lien is summoned to appear before the council. The great hall feels cavernous and cold, filled with alphas and elders whose faces show nothing but disappointment and disgust. Your presence reminds everyone of weakness, of failure. Perhaps it would be better if you found somewhere else to live. They strip him of his family name first. He is no longer Lien Arden of the Northern Scold Pack. He is just Lien, unaffiliated, unwanted. Then they come for his dwelling, the small cabin on the outskirts of Pack territory that had been his sanctuary. He watches from a distance as they set it ablaze, the flames consuming everything he owns, every memory of the life he had built. The smoke rises black and bitter against the gray sky, carrying away the last remnants of his place in the world. The other Omegas who had once been his friends now cross the street to avoid him. They fear that association with a rejected mate will bring them bad luck, will mark them as undesirable to potential alphas. The few who still speak to him do so with the careful, pitying tones reserved for the terminally ill or the deeply unfortunate. The alphas are worse. Some mock him openly, making crude jokes about his inadequacy as he passes by the training grounds. Others look at him with a mixture of pity and disgust that makes his skin crawl. Maybe if you had been stronger, one of them says as Lien hurries past, his words carrying clearly in the crisp morning air. Maybe if you had fought for what you wanted instead of just standing there like a wounded deer. But what was he supposed to have done? Forced Kale to accept a bond he didn't want? Begged him to reconsider while the entire pack watched? The laws of fated mates are clear. Both parties must willingly accept the bond. No amount of pleading or fighting could make Kale want him if he had already decided that Lien wasn't worthy. After a week of this treatment, Lien makes the only choice he has left. In the dark hours before dawn, when the pack sleeps and the forest is quiet except for the whisper of wind through the pines, he gathers the few possessions they haven't burned and slips away from pack territory. He heads east, toward the dark expanse of the eastern forest, a wild place where exiles and outcasts go when they have nowhere else to turn. The eastern forest is ancient and deep, its trees so old and massive that they block out most of the sunlight even at midday. Strange creatures live in its depths, things that were once human or wolf but have been changed by old magic and isolation. It should be terrifying, but after what Lien has endured, the prospect of facing monsters seems almost peaceful. At least the creatures of the forest are honest about their intentions. They don't pretend to care before they destroy you. He finds shelter in a cave on the first night, using his remaining supplies to build a small fire. As he sits staring into the flames, he thinks about Kale's words. Was he really so weak, so worthless, that even his fated mate couldn't bear the thought of being bound to him? The pain of rejection is still fresh, a constant ache in his chest where their bond should have been. But as the night wears on, something else begins to grow alongside it, a quiet, steady anger that burns hotter than any fire. The forest tests him in ways the pack never did. He learns to hunt with nothing but a sharpened stick and his wits. He learns to identify which plants are safe to eat and which ones will kill him. He learns to move silently through the underbrush, to hide his scent from the predators that stalk these woods. Most importantly, he learns that he is stronger than anyone, including himself, ever believed. Away from the constant judgment and pity of the pack, Lien begins to remember who he had been before the rejection. He had always been quiet, yes, but that didn't make him weak. His gentle nature had made him a skilled healer, able to calm injured wolves and ease their pain. His intelligence had made him a valued strategist, capable of seeing solutions that others missed. His empathy had made him a natural mediator, able to resolve conflicts that brute strength never could. The pack had taught him to see these qualities as weaknesses, as evidence of his fundamental inadequacy as a wolf. But here in the wilderness, where survival depends on more than just raw power, Lien discovers that his supposed weaknesses are actually his greatest strengths. He has been living on roots and stream water for nearly 2 weeks when he encounters Rail Corvin for the first time. Lien is attempting to fish in a mountain stream, his makeshift spear poised over the rushing water, when a shadow falls across the rocky bank. He looks up to see a figure standing on the opposite shore, tall and lean, with features that are almost human but not quite. The stranger's skin has a subtle pallor to it, like marble that has never seen sunlight, and his eyes are the color of fresh blood. When he smiles, Lien catches a glimpse of teeth that are just slightly too sharp, too white, too perfect. Everything about him speaks of predator, but not the crude, obvious threat of a wolf or bear. This is something far more dangerous, elegant, refined, and absolutely lethal. "You're not very good at that," the stranger observes, nodding toward Lien's fishing spear. His voice has an unusual quality to it, like velvet over steel, with an accent that speaks of centuries and distant lands. "Would you like some assistance?" "I'm still learning," Lien replies, surprised by how calm he feels in the stranger's presence. Most creatures in this forest radiate danger like a physical force, but this being feels different. Powerful, yes, but not malevolent. There's something almost curious about him, as if Lien is a puzzle he's trying to solve. "Learning to fish or learning to survive?" the stranger asks, stepping across the stream with inhuman grace. Up close, Lien can see that his fingernails are more like claws, filed to perfect points, and his movements have the fluid precision of something that has never known uncertainty or doubt. "Both, I suppose," Lien says honestly. There's something about this creature that invites truth, that makes pretense seem not just pointless but actually offensive. The stranger studies him with those blood-red eyes, and Lien has the unsettling feeling that he's being catalogued, assessed, judged according to criteria he doesn't understand. "You're not from the forest originally," the stranger says finally. "You smell of pack lands and rejection." Lien tenses, expecting mockery or pity, but the stranger's expression remains neutral, merely curious. "I was exiled," Lien says simply, the words coming out steadier than he expected. "Ah." The stranger tilts his head, studying Lien with renewed interest. "And what did you do to earn such punishment? Murder? Theft? Betrayal?" "I was rejected by my fated mate." The words still hurt to say, but they come out without the tremor of shame that usually accompanies them. Here, in this wild place, with this strange and dangerous creature, the rejection feels less like a personal failing and more like a simple fact of his existence. To Lien's surprise, the stranger vampire, he realizes, recognizing him from old stories, laughs. But it's not cruel laughter. not the mocking sound he's grown accustomed to from his former pack. He's genuinely amused, almost fond. That's it? The vampire asks, shaking his head in apparent disbelief. You were cast out for someone else's failure of character? Pack politics never cease to amaze me. You know about pack law? Lien asks, curious despite himself. I know about many things. I am Rael Corvin, keeper of the Shadowmere estate. He gestures toward the deeper parts of the forest, where the trees grow so thick that they block out the sky entirely. I deal in artifacts, knowledge, and the occasional lost soul looking for purpose. Something in his tone makes Lien look at him more carefully. Are you offering me something? Perhaps. Rael's red eyes seem to glow in the filtered sunlight. You have an interesting quality about you, a stillness that speaks of inner strength rather than weakness. Most wolves I've encountered are all bluster and rage, but you. He pauses, as if searching for the right words. You have the patience of someone who has suffered and learned from it. What would be the terms of such an arrangement? Lien asks, his natural caution warring with the desperate hope that's beginning to bloom in his chest. Food, shelter, protection from those who would hunt you, Rael says simply. In exchange, you work for me. Nothing more complicated than that. He extends his hand, and Lien notices that his palm is marked with symbols that seem to shift and dance in the light. Do we have an agreement? Lien looks at the offered hand, then back at Rael's face. In those red eyes, he sees something he hasn't seen from anyone in weeks. Respect. Not pity, not disgust, not even mere tolerance, but actual respect for who he is and what he can offer. We have an agreement, Lien says, taking the vampire's hand. The journey to Shadowmere Estate takes them deeper into the forest than Lien has ever been. The trees here are ancient beyond measure, their trunks so wide that 10 men couldn't wrap their arms around them. Moss hangs from their branches like tattered curtains, and the air is thick with the smell of earth and growing things. Strange sounds echo through the canopy, not the familiar calls of wolves or the rustle of small game, but something altogether more mysterious. This forest has been my home for over 3 centuries, Rael explains as they walk. It exists in a space between the mortal world and the realm of shadows, which makes it perfect for someone like me. The pack territories end at the edge of the ancient grove. They're too superstitious to venture deeper. And you've been alone all this time? Lien asks, curious about this strange creature who has shown him more kindness in a single afternoon than his pack had in the weeks following his rejection. Not alone exactly. I have servants, companions of a sort. But conversation, meaningful conversation, that has been in short supply. Rael glances at him sideways. Most creatures are so predictable in their wants and fears. But you might be different. The estate, when they finally reach it, is nothing like what Lien expected. From the outside, it looks like a massive manor house built from black stone that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. But as they approach, Lien realizes that the building is far larger than it initially appeared, its architecture shifting and changing as if it exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Magic, Rael explains when he sees Lien staring. The estate exists partially in the shadow realm, which allows it to be much larger inside than outside. Convenient for someone who has been collecting things for centuries. Inside, the manor is warm and welcoming, filled with comfortable furniture. Walls lined with books in languages Lien doesn't recognize, and artwork that seems to move when he's not looking directly at it. Fireplaces crackle merrily in every room, and the air smells of leather and aged wood and something indefinably pleasant that Lien can't quite identify. Your rooms are on the 3rd floor, Rael says, leading him up a grand staircase carved from what looks like a single massive tree. A bedroom, a sitting area, and a workspace where you can carry out your duties. They're simple but comfortable, and after weeks of sleeping in caves and under trees, they feel like the height of luxury. What exactly will my work involve? Lien asks as Rael shows him around the estate. Research, primarily. I have texts in dozens of languages, some of them so old they're barely remembered. Your natural intuition should help you understand context and meaning in ways that pure scholarship cannot. Rael pauses at a table covered with scrolls and books. There's also correspondence to maintain, artifacts to catalog, and the occasional translation project. And the companionship you mentioned? Rael glances at him, and for a moment, his carefully controlled expression slips. I have lived for over 800 years, Lien. Do you know how difficult it becomes to find conversation that doesn't bore you to tears after the first century? Most beings are so predictable, so limited in their thinking. But you, he studies Lien's face with those piercing red eyes. You might be different. The work is engaging in ways Lien hadn't expected. The ancient texts are filled with wisdom and beauty, stories of love and loss and triumph that resonate across the centuries. His natural empathy helps him understand not just the words but the emotions behind them. The hope of a long-dead poet, the despair of a conquered king, the joy of lovers reunited after years of separation. Rael proves to be an excellent teacher and, as the weeks pass, an increasingly comfortable companion. He's brilliant and well-traveled, with stories that span continents and centuries. But more than that, he's kind in ways that are subtle but meaningful. He never mocks Lien's ignorance when he encounters something unfamiliar, never makes him feel lesser for being in exile. Instead, he seems genuinely pleased by Lien's curiosity, by his eagerness to learn and grow. You don't seem like the vampires from the old stories, Lien tells him one evening as they work together in Rael's study, translating a particularly complex ritual text. What did the old stories say about vampires? Rael asks without looking up from his own work. That they were cruel and manipulative, that they delighted in corrupting the innocent and drinking their blood until they died. Some do, Rael says matter-of-factly. But then some wolves delight in cruelty as well. Some humans, some fae, some of every species I've encountered. Evil isn't determined by what you are, it's determined by what you choose to do. And what do you choose to do? Rael is quiet for a long moment, his pen poised over the parchment. I choose to preserve knowledge that would otherwise be lost. I choose to help those who seek answers to important questions. And I choose to surround myself with beings who make existence interesting rather than tedious. Is that what I do? Make existence interesting. Rael looks at him then, and Lien sees something warm in his red eyes, something that makes his heart race in a way that has nothing to do with fear. Among other things, yes. As autumn turns to winter, their relationship deepens from professional to something more personal. They share meals together, work side by side in comfortable silence, and spend evenings by the fire discussing everything from ancient philosophy to the migration patterns of birds. Lien finds himself looking forward to Rael's company in ways that have nothing to do with employment or even friendship. There's something electric in the air between them, a tension that grows stronger with each passing day. It's during one of winter's worst storms that everything changes between them. Lien has been feeling unwell for several days. Not sick exactly, but restless and uncomfortable in his own skin. His scent has been shifting too, becoming sweeter and more intense in ways that make him self-conscious. He tries to hide it, but Rael's enhanced senses make concealment impossible. You're going into heat, Rael says bluntly one morning over breakfast. Lien nearly chokes on his tea. I'm what? Heat. It happens to unmated omegas, though usually not as intensely as what you're experiencing. Rael studies his face with clinical interest. When was your last cycle? I've never had one, Lien admits, embarrassed. The pack healer said it was because of my bond with Kale, that my body was waiting for our mating to trigger my first adult cycle. Ah! Understanding dawns in Rael's expression. And now that the bond has been severed, your body is trying to complete its natural development. Inconvenient timing, given the storm. The storm he references is indeed severe wind howling around the manor with enough force to rattle the windows. Snow falling so heavily that the world outside has disappeared into white nothingness. Even if Lien wanted to leave to avoid the awkwardness of going through heat near an unmated male, travel is impossible. I can prepare a room on the top floor, Rael offers, far enough away that my presence won't exacerbate your condition. There are supplies there, foods that will help, herbs to ease the discomfort. You would do that for me? Of course. Rael looks puzzled by the question. Did you think I would throw you out into a blizzard? The heat hits Lien like a physical blow that afternoon. One moment he's organizing correspondence in his workspace. The next he's doubled over with waves of need that leave him gasping. His skin feels like it's on fire, and every nerve ending seems hypersensitive. The sweet, desperate scent of an omega in heat begins to fill the air, and within minutes, Rael appears in his doorway. For a moment, the vampire's carefully controlled expression slips, and Lien sees the predator beneath the civilized exterior. Rael's nostrils flare as he catches the scent, his red eyes darkening to the color of fresh blood. But then he masters himself, his face becoming a mask of concern and professionalism. Come, he says, his voice rougher than usual. Let me help you to the upper room. The next 3 days are a blur of fever and need. Rael brings him food and water, herbs to ease the worst of the symptoms, cool cloths for his burning skin. He's professional and careful, never taking advantage of Lien's vulnerable state. But Lien can see the strain it puts on him. The vampire's own scent becomes more intense, responding to Lien's despite his best efforts to remain unaffected. Why aren't you claiming me? Lien asks on the second night, his mind hazy with heat fever but still curious. I'm unmated, in heat, and you're clearly affected. Most alphas would see this as an opportunity. Because you're not in your right mind, Rael says simply, wringing out another cool cloth. And because when you come to my bed, I want it to be your choice, not your biology making the decision for you. When, not if. Rael pauses in his ministrations, meeting Lien's eyes. I have grown fond of you, Lien, more fond than is probably wise. But I won't take advantage of your heat to get what I want. When the heat finally breaks, Lien feels different, not just physically, but emotionally. The experience has been intense and overwhelming, but having Rael care for him through it has created a bond between them that goes beyond employer and employee, beyond even friendship. Thank you, Lien tells him as he finally emerges from the upper room, clean and dressed and feeling more like himself, for taking care of me, for being honorable. You don't need to thank me for basic decency, Rael says, but Lien can see the relief in his expression at having him back to normal. How do you feel? Different, stronger somehow, like I've finally grown into who I was meant to be. Lien studies Rael's face, noting the signs of strain and sleepless nights. It was difficult for you too. Yes, Rael admits, but not unbearably so. I'm older than I look, Lien. I have excellent self-control when I choose to exercise it. And if I asked you not to exercise it? If I told you that what I feel for you has nothing to do with heat and everything to do with the man you've shown yourself to be? Rael goes very still. What are you saying? I'm saying that I care for you, that these months of working together, of getting to know you, have made me realize that what I had with Kale was nothing compared to what I could have with you. Lien steps closer, close enough to see the way Rael's pupils dilate at his nearness. I'm saying that if you want me, I'm yours. The kiss Rael gives him is gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if he can't quite believe this is happening. But when Lien responds eagerly, pressing closer and opening his mouth under his, Rael deepens it with a passion that makes Lien's knees weak. Are you certain? Rael asks against his lips. I'm not human, Lien. I'm not even mortal. A relationship with me would be complicated. I'm an exiled Omega with empathic abilities, Lien replies, his heart racing with joy and desire. I think I can handle complicated. What follows is the most beautiful night of Lien's life. Rael makes love to him with a patience and skill that leaves him speechless, worshipping his body like it's something precious rather than just using it for pleasure. The vampire's touch is cool against his heated skin, his strength tempered by a gentleness that brings tears to Lien's eyes. Mine, Rael whispers against his throat as he moves within him, his voice rough with emotion. My Omega, my heart, my choice. Yours? Lien agrees, arching beneath him as pleasure builds to impossible heights. Always yours. In the morning, Lien wakes in Rael's arms, feeling more complete than he ever has before. This isn't the desperate pull of a fated bond, but something he has chosen freely, something that is his and Rael's alone.
No regrets.
Rael asks, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on Lien's bare skin. None, Lien says, meaning it completely. Only that it took us so long to get here. Rael presses a kiss to the top of his head. I love you, Lien. I know it's soon to say it, but I've lived long enough to recognize the real thing when I find it. I love you too, Lien whispers, and feels the truth of it resonate through every fiber of his being. Their relationship transforms from that point forward. They're still employer and employee during working hours, but in private, they're lovers and partners. Rael shows Lien wonders he had never imagined, other realms accessible through ancient magic, artifacts that hold the power of lost civilizations, knowledge that has been hidden from the world for centuries. But more than that, he shows Lien that he is worthy of love exactly as he is, not stronger, not different, not improved in any way, just himself, with all his gentleness and empathy and supposed weaknesses. It's during the spring that they encounter Isaac. Lien has been exploring the ruins of an old temple about an hour's walk from the estate when he hears crying. Following the sound, he finds a small figure huddled in the shadow of a broken wall. A child, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, with cuts on his arms and terror in his dark eyes. The boy is human, but there's something unusual about him. His scent carries undertones that Lien doesn't recognize, and when he moves, it's with a grace that seems almost supernatural. But his tears are real enough, and the pain radiating from him is heartbreaking. Hey there, Lien says softly, crouching down to the child's level. Are you hurt? The boy looks up at him with eyes too old for his face. Are you going to hurt me too? He asks in a voice barely above a whisper. No, Lien says firmly. I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Lien. What's yours? Isaac, the boy says after a moment of hesitation. I don't have a family name. I don't have a family at all. The story comes out in fragments over the following hour. Isaac is half human, half fae, the result of a union between a human woman and a member of the Shadow Court. His mother died when he was very young, and he's been passed from relative to relative, none of whom wanted to care for a child who reminded them daily of otherworldly influence. The last family said I was cursed, Isaac explains, showing Lien the fresh cuts on his arms. They said half-breed children bring bad luck. They hurt me and told me to go away. Looking at this frightened, injured child, Lien feels something fierce and protective awaken in his chest. Well, they were wrong, he says firmly. You're not cursed, and you don't bring bad luck. You're just different, and different doesn't mean wrong. You really think so? I know so. Come on. Let's get those cuts cleaned and see about getting you something to eat. Lien brings Isaac back to the estate, expecting to have to convince Rael to let the boy stay temporarily. But when he explains the situation, the vampire's response surprises him. He can stay, Rael says immediately, kneeling down to examine Isaac's injuries with gentle hands. Half-breed children are rare and often misunderstood. It would be a crime to let him suffer for something he had no control over. Really? Isaac looks between them with hope beginning to replace the fear in his eyes. I can stay here? If you want to, Lien says. We can't offer you a traditional family, but we can offer you safety and care and people who won't hurt you for being different. That night, as they settle Isaac into a room near Lien's, Rael pulls him aside. Are you certain about this? He asks quietly. Caring for a child is a significant responsibility. I'm certain, Lien says without hesitation. Rael, I know what it's like to be rejected for things you can't help. I won't let that happen to him if I can prevent it. And what if his presence here attracts attention? Half-fae children have enemies, and not all of them will be impressed by our good intentions. Then we'll protect him, Lien says simply. All of us together. Rael studies his face for a long moment, then smiles. You continue to amaze me, my heart. Yes, we'll protect him. All of us together. Isaac brings light into their lives in ways Lien hadn't expected. His initial fear gradually gives way to curiosity, and then to genuine joy as he realizes that they truly mean to keep him safe. He's incredibly intelligent, absorbing knowledge like a sponge and asking questions that keep both Rael and Lien on their toes. Why do people fear half-breeds? Isaac asks one evening as the three of them sit by the fire, Rael reading aloud from a book of fairy tales. Because they don't understand them, Rael explains patiently. Half-fae children have abilities that seem strange to those who live entirely in the mortal realm. Some people fear anything they don't understand. But you're not afraid of me. No, we're not, Lien says, pulling Isaac closer against his side. We think your abilities are interesting, not frightening. Can you show us? Rael asks gently. Only if you want to, of course. Isaac looks between them uncertainly, then seems to make up his mind. He holds up his hand, and slowly, shadows begin to gather around his fingers like living smoke. With careful concentration, he shapes them into small figures, a wolf, a bird, a flower, each one perfectly detailed despite being made of nothing but darkness. That's incredible, Lien breathes, watching the shadow wolf pad across Isaac's palm. You're an artist, Isaac. You create beauty. You think so? The boy's face lights up with pride. The other families said it was creepy. The other families were idiots, Rael says firmly. Beauty comes in many forms, and yours is unique and wonderful. Over the following months, they settle into life as an unlikely family. Rael continues his work as a keeper of knowledge and dealer in artifacts. Lien assists with research and translations, and Isaac serves as their apprentice and, more importantly, the heart of their strange household. But their peaceful existence is shattered one autumn morning when strangers appear at their door. Lien senses them before they knock, the familiar pack scent of home mixed with anger and suspicion. Through the windows, he can see figures moving through the trees, more wolves than he's seen in one place since his exile. His heart clenches with old pain and newer fear as he recognizes the distinctive bearing of his former packmates. Pack wolves, he tells Rael and Isaac as they gather in the main hall. At least 6 of them, possibly more. They're not here for a friendly visit. Can you tell what they want? Rael asks, his demeanor shifting into something more dangerous. Me, I think. They're angry about something they blame on me. Then we'll face them together, Rael says firmly. You're not dealing with your former pack alone. When they open the door, Lien finds himself face to face with members of his old pack, led by someone he had hoped never to see again. Kale stands at the front of the group, looking every inch the proud alpha he's always been. His winterstorm eyes are hard with condemnation, and his presence seems to command the attention of every wolf present. Lien, Kale says, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. Or do you still use that name, despite bringing shame to it? I use the name I was born with, Lien replies, proud that his voice remains steady. What do you want, Kale? We want answers. The borderlands have been experiencing magical disturbances for months. Twisted creatures, corrupted plants, reality itself seeming to bend in unnatural ways. The trail leads here, to this estate, to your new associates. His gaze shifts to Rael, and Lien sees recognition flicker in his eyes. He knows what Rael is, and he doesn't like it. You live with vampires now, one of the other pack members spits. You've betrayed everything our people stand for. I live with someone who treats me with respect and kindness. Lien replies, something I never received from the pack. Respect. Kale laughs harshly. What respect does a vampire show its pet? You're nothing but a plaything to him, a curiosity to be used until he grows bored. The insult to both him and Rael makes anger flare in Lien's chest. But before he can respond, Rael steps forward. The temperature around them seems to drop several degrees, and Lien catches a glimpse of something dangerous flickering in the vampire's red eyes. You will not speak to him that way, Rael says, his voice carrying undertones of power that make even the Alpha Pack members shift nervously. Lien is my chosen mate, my partner in all things, and he deserves respect from anyone who enters my domain. Chosen mate. Kale's expression twists with something that might be jealousy. You mean claimed property. Vampires don't form bonds. They take what they want and discard it when they're finished. You seem to be confusing vampires with werewolf alphas, Rael replies coolly. Lien chose me and I chose him in return. Neither of us was coerced. Neither of us was desperate. And neither of us settled for less than we deserved. The barb hits its mark. Kale's face darkens with rage, and several of the pack members behind him growl low in their throats. You've corrupted him, Kale snarls. Turned him against his own kind with your dark magic. I didn't turn him against anything, Rael says. Your pack managed that all on their own when they cast out one of their most valuable members for the crime of being rejected by a coward. How dare you dash? How dare I what? Tell the truth. Rael's power is becoming more visible now, shadows wreathing his hands as his calm facade begins to crack. You rejected your fated mate publicly, humiliated him in front of his entire community, and then allowed that community to exile him for your failure. And now you have the audacity to come here and suggest that he's the one who chose betrayal. The confrontation might have escalated into violence, but Isaac chooses that moment to appear in the doorway behind them. The pack members react to his presence with visible alarm. Half-fey children are the stuff of nightmares to most werewolves. Lien. Isaac's voice is small and frightened. Are these the bad people who hurt you before? Not all of them, Lien says gently, kneeling to Isaac's level. Some of them, yes, but don't worry. They're not going to hurt any of us. The child is fey-touched. One of the pack members whispers, and Lien can hear the fear in his voice. The corruption is spreading. First the Omega consorting with vampires. Now they're harboring monsters. He's not a monster, Lien says, standing and placing a protective hand on Isaac's shoulder. He's a little boy who needed a home and people who would care for him. We gave him both. This ends now, Kale declares, his alpha authority making his voice carry across the clearing. You will return with us to face judgment for the magical contamination you've caused. The vampire will be banished from Packlands, and the Fey child will be dealt with according to ancient law. Ancient law? Lien feels ice form in his veins. You mean you want to kill him? Half-Fey creatures are abominations that corrupt everything they touch. It would be a mercy. The protective rage that sweeps through Lien is unlike anything he has ever experienced. This sweet, intelligent child who has brought so much joy into their lives. They want to murder him simply for existing. No, Lien says, and his voice carries power he didn't know he possessed. You will not touch him. You will not threaten him. And you will leave our home immediately. Your home. Kale steps closer, trying to use his size and alpha presence to intimidate Lien. You have no home, Omega. You were cast out, rejected, abandoned. You're nothing but a stray that a vampire decided to keep as a pet. I am more than I ever was when I lived among the pack, Lien replies, meeting Kale's gaze steadily. I have work that matters, love that fulfills me, and a family that chooses me freely. What do you have, Kale? A pack that fears you more than they respect you? Leadership built on intimidation rather than inspiration? A life so empty that you have to travel for days just to hurt someone who never wronged you. Through his empathic abilities, Lien can feel Kale's emotions clearly now. Rage? Yes, but also pain and regret and a loneliness that matches what Lien felt during his own exile. Kale had made his choice at the bonding ceremony, but it hadn't brought him the satisfaction he had expected. I made the right choice, Kale says, but there's doubt in his voice. The pack needs strong leadership. The pack needs wise leadership, Lien corrects. Strength without wisdom is just brutality. And brutality is what you're proposing now, the murder of a child whose only crime is being different. It's not murder, it's protection. Protection for whom? The pack is miles away from here. Isaac has never set foot on Packlands, has never threatened anyone, has never done anything but try to survive in a world that hates him for circumstances beyond his control. Lien steps forward, no longer the timid Omega who had been broken by rejection. You want to kill him because his existence makes you uncomfortable. That's not protection. That's cowardice. The words hit Kale like physical blows, and Lien sees him flinch. Around them, the other pack members are shifting nervously, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the confrontation is taking. The magical disturbances - one of them begins. Have nothing to do with us, Rael interrupts. I've been monitoring the magical climate of this region for months. The disturbances you're experiencing are coming from the northern mountains, not from this estate. There's an old nexus point there that's becoming unstable. If you want to solve your problem, that's where you need to look. You're lying. I'm an 800-year-old vampire who has made the study of magic his life's work, Rael replies dryly. You're a werewolf who probably doesn't know the difference between active magic and residual traces. Which of us do you think is more qualified to make this assessment? The truth of his words is obvious to everyone present, but Cale isn't ready to back down. His pride and his prejudices are too deeply entrenched. Even if that's true, he says, it doesn't change what you are, what all of you are. Unnatural, wrong, a corruption that needs to be cleansed. If we're so unnatural, Lien asks quietly, then why are we happy? Why do we care for each other, protect each other, love each other? Why does our home feel more like a family than your pack ever did? The question catches Cale off guard. Through his empathic abilities, Lien feels the alpha's confusion, his inability to reconcile his prejudices with the evidence in front of him. They aren't the monsters he had expected to find. They're just people who have found each other and chosen to build something beautiful together. Because vampires are skilled at deception, Cale says finally, but the conviction is gone from his voice. Is that what you see when you look at us? Lien asks. Deception? Or do you see what you lost when you made your choice at the bonding ceremony? I lost nothing, Cale snaps. I made the right choice for my pack. Did you? Or did you make the choice that felt safer? The choice that didn't require you to be vulnerable, to open your heart, to risk being hurt. Lien studies Cale's face, seeing the pain he's trying so hard to hide. I know what it feels like to be afraid, Cale, but courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite the fear. And you think running away to live with vampires was courageous? I think building a new life from nothing was courageous. I think opening my heart to love again after being rejected was courageous. I think protecting a child who has no one else was courageous. Lien glances back at Rael and Isaac, drawing strength from their presence. But most of all, I think choosing love over hate, acceptance over prejudice, and hope over despair was courageous. The silence that follows is heavy with unspoken emotions. Lien can feel the conflict raging within Cale, his alpha training warring with his personal desires, his prejudices battling against the evidence of his own eyes. This isn't over, Cale says finally, but the threat sounds hollow. The pack will not tolerate this corruption on our borders. Then the pack will have to learn tolerance, Rael says firmly, because we're not going anywhere. This is our home, and we will defend it against anyone who threatens our family. Family? Cale's voice is bitter. You call this aberration a family? Yes, Lien says simply, because that's what it is. Not bound by blood or species or traditional bonds, but chosen freely and maintained through love and mutual respect. It's not the family I expected to have, but it's the one I choose every day. As if to emphasize his words, Isaac steps forward and takes Lien's hand, his small fingers interlacing with the Omegas. The gesture is simple but powerful, a child choosing his protector, demonstrating the bonds that hold their unusual household together. We choose each other, Isaac says quietly, his young voice carrying surprising strength. Every day we choose to be a family. Isn't that what love is supposed to be? The innocence and wisdom in his words seem to pierce through even Cale's defenses. For a moment, his harsh expression softens, and Lien catches a glimpse of the man he might have been if fear and pride hadn't ruled his choices. But the moment passes quickly as Cale reasserts his alpha persona. You have 1 week, he says. 1 week to leave this territory and take your family with you. If you're still here after that, we'll consider you a hostile threat and act accordingly. We're not leaving, Lien says calmly. This is our home. We've built a life here, and we're not abandoning it because of threats from people who have no authority over us. Then you've chosen your fate, Kale says. He turns to leave, then pauses and looks back at Lien. I had thought perhaps there was still time to salvage something from the bond we once shared. But I can see now that the corruption runs too deep. There never was a bond between us, Lien replies. You made sure of that. What you're mourning isn't what we had. It's what you threw away. After the pack leaves, the three of them stand together in the doorway, watching the wolves disappear into the forest. Lien feels drained by the confrontation but also strangely liberated. He has faced his past and stood up to it, has defended the life he has chosen without apology or compromise. Are they really going to come back and hurt us? Isaac asks, his voice smaller than usual. They might try, Rael says honestly. But if they do, we'll be ready for them. How can we be ready for a whole pack? Lien asks. There are only 3 of us. 3 of us with very particular skills, Rael corrects. You have empathic abilities that could confuse and disorient them. I have magic powerful enough to level mountains if necessary. And Isaac has fey abilities they don't understand and can't predict. You really think we can defend ourselves? I think we can do more than that, Rael says, his red eyes glowing with fierce determination. I think we can show them that different doesn't mean wrong, that chosen families can be just as strong as blood families, and that love is more powerful than hate. And if we can't convince them, then we protect what matters most to us, Rael says simply. By any means necessary. The week that follows is tense but productive. Rael begins teaching both Lien and Isaac defensive techniques that could help them protect themselves and each other if violence becomes unavoidable. Lien works on expanding his empathic abilities, learning to project emotions as well as read them. Isaac practices controlling his fey abilities with increasing sophistication, his shadow creatures becoming more complex and lifelike with each passing day. But more than preparing for conflict, they use the time to strengthen the bonds between them. They talk about what their family means to each of them, what they're willing to sacrifice to protect it, and what kind of future they want to build together. I've never had a real family before, Isaac tells them one evening as they sit together by the fire. Not one that wanted me around. I thought there was something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you, Lien assures him. You're exactly who you're supposed to be. Even if I'm different, especially because you're different, Rael says. Difference is what makes life interesting. Conformity is overrated. Is that why you chose Lien? Isaac asks with the directness that only children possess. Because he's different? Rael looks at Lien, his expression soft with affection. I chose Lien because he's kind and intelligent and brave. Because he sees beauty where others see only strangeness. Because he makes me want to be better than I am. He reaches over and takes Lien's hand. And yes, because he's different from anyone I've ever known. And you chose him too, right, Lien? Even though people said it was wrong. I chose him because he makes me feel valued and loved and whole, Lien says. Because he never asked me to be someone I'm not. Because he accepted all of me. The gifts, the scars, the fears, everything. That's what real love is supposed to be like. Isaac says with the wisdom of someone far older than his years. Accepting all the pieces, even the weird ones. The pack returns on the 8th day, just as dawn is breaking over the forest. But this time they don't come alone. Lien senses them long before they become visible dozens of wolves. Far more than had come the first time. Through his empathic abilities, he can feel their emotions. Determination, fear, anger, and underneath it all, the kind of righteous certainty that makes people capable of terrible things. They've brought the entire pack. Lien tells Rael and Isaac as they prepare for the confrontation. This isn't a negotiation anymore. They're here for war. Then war is what they'll get, Rael says grimly. His usual calm demeanor has been replaced by something far more dangerous, and shadows dance around his fingers as he speaks. I won't let them hurt our family. When the pack emerges from the tree-line, Lien is stunned by their numbers. Nearly 50 wolves in human form, armed with traditional weapons and arranged in fighting formation. At their head walks Kale, his face set in lines of grim determination. You were given a chance to leave peacefully, Kale calls out as they approach the estate. You chose to stay. Now you face the consequences. The consequences of what? Lien calls back. Of finding happiness? Of building a family? Of refusing to be ashamed of who we are? The consequences of corruption, another voice answers. Lien recognizes him as one of the pack's spiritual leaders, an elder who has always been suspicious of anything that doesn't fit into traditional categories. You consort with vampires, harbor fey creatures, and practice unnatural magic. Your very existence is an affront to the natural order. What's unnatural about love? Isaac asks, stepping forward with more courage than any child should have to show. What's wrong with taking care of each other? You are an abomination, the elder says harshly. Half-fey creatures are born from the union of light and darkness, order and chaos. You represent everything that should not be. He represents hope, Lien says firmly. He represents the possibility that different kinds of beings can coexist peacefully. He represents love transcending boundaries. Enough words, Kale interrupts. You've had your chance to see reason. Stand aside, vampire, and let us cleanse this corruption. No. Rael's voice carries such power that several of the pack members actually take steps backward. You will not touch him. You will not touch either of them. They are under my protection, and I will destroy anyone who threatens them. You're outnumbered 50-1, Kale points out. Powerful or not, you can't fight all of us. Perhaps not, Rael agrees. But I can make sure that anyone who survives will remember the cost of threatening my family. The battle that follows is unlike anything Lien has ever witnessed. Rael's magic is devastating shadows that can crush steel, illusions that turn the pack's numbers against them, barriers that deflect the strongest attacks. But he's vastly outnumbered, and even his considerable power has limits. Lien does what he can to help, using his empathic abilities to anticipate attacks and warn Rael of threats he can't see. He projects waves of confusion and fear into the attacking wolves, disrupting their coordination and breaking their formation. Isaac contributes too, using his fey abilities to create shadow creatures that confuse and disorient their attackers. But they're still just 3 against 50, and gradually, inevitably, they begin to be overwhelmed. It's when one of the pack members breaks through their defenses and lunges toward Isaac with a silver blade that something inside Lien snaps. The protective rage that has been building throughout the fight suddenly explodes outward, and Lien feels power flow through him like nothing he has ever experienced. His empathic abilities, which have always been passive, suddenly become active. Instead of just feeling emotions, he begins projecting them waves of terror, despair, and overwhelming guilt that strike the attacking wolves like physical blows. Several of them drop their weapons and flee, others fall to their knees, overwhelmed by the sudden onslaught of foreign emotions. Lien can feel all of them now, their fears, their doubts, their secret shames, and he uses that knowledge like a weapon. Stop, he commands, and his voice carries power that makes even Kale freeze mid-attack. This ends now. Lien. Rael looks at him with amazement. How are you doing this? I don't know, Lien admits, but I can feel all of them, their fears, their doubts, their secret shames, and I can make them feel what I felt, what we've all felt. He turns his attention to the pack, projecting the emotions he had experienced during his exile. The loneliness, the rejection, the despair of being cast out by those who should have cared for him. One by one, the wolves begin to lower their weapons as they experience firsthand what their actions have caused. This is what you did to me, Lien says, his voice carrying to every member of the pack. This is what your prejudice and fear created. This is the pain you caused because you couldn't accept someone who was different. But he doesn't stop there. He also projects the joy he has found with Rael and Isaac, the warmth of acceptance, the security of unconditional love, the happiness of being valued for who he truly is. He lets them feel what it's like to be part of a family that chooses each other daily, that supports each other through difficulties, that celebrates each other's differences instead of fearing them. And this is what you could have, he continues. This is what love looks like when it's not constrained by tradition or prejudice. This is what family feels like when it's built on acceptance rather than conformity. The effect on the pack is profound. Many of them are weeping openly, overwhelmed by the intensity of the emotions Lien is sharing. Others look around with new understanding, seeing their companions not as part of a unified force but as individuals with their own fears and desires. But Kale, whether through alpha stubbornness or genuine resistance to Lien's power, remains standing. Enough, he snarls, raising his weapon. I won't be swayed by vampire magic and Omega manipulation. This isn't magic, Lien says sadly. This is truth. This is what you threw away when you rejected our bond. This is what you've been missing all these years. I chose strength over weakness, Kale insists. I chose the good of the pack over personal desire. You chose fear over love, Lien corrects. And fear has made you into something your pack doesn't even recognize anymore. To prove his point, Lien projects Kale's emotions outward, letting the other pack members feel what is really driving their alpha. Not noble dedication to duty, but terror of vulnerability, fear of being seen as weak, and a loneliness so profound it's like a physical wound. The reaction is immediate and devastating. Several pack members step away from Kale, their expressions shifting from loyalty to pity. Others begin to question out loud whether following him into this fight had been the right choice. You see, Lien says gently, he's not the strong leader you think he is. He's a frightened man who has spent so long hiding his fears that he's forgotten how to be anything else. Stop, Kale whispers, and for the first time since Lien has known him, his voice breaks. Please, just stop. Lien could continue. He could destroy Kale completely, lay bare every secret shame and hidden weakness until the alpha is broken beyond repair. But as he looks at him, really looks at him, he sees not the alpha who rejected him, but a man who has been trapped by his own fears for so long that he has forgotten what it feels like to be free. I forgive you, Lien says quietly, and he means it. I forgive you for the rejection, for the pain, for trying to destroy the happiness I found after you threw me away. But I won't let you hurt my family. The power he has been wielding gradually subsides, leaving him exhausted but strangely at peace. Around them, the members of the pack are picking themselves up, looking around with the confused expressions of people waking from a shared dream. The corruption they spoke of, one of them says slowly, I don't see it. I see love. Real love, freely given and freely received. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe different doesn't always mean dangerous, another adds. Maybe we should have tried to understand instead of just fearing. Kale looks around at his pack, his followers who are now questioning everything he has taught them, and Lien sees something break inside him. Not his spirit, but the rigid control that has been strangling his heart for so long. I was wrong, Kale says, his voice barely audible. About all of it. About you, about what strength really means, about what the pack needs. He looks directly at Lien. I was a coward, and I made you pay for my cowardice. You were afraid, Lien says. There's a difference. Is there? I hurt you because I was too scared to admit that I loved you. I led my pack here to hurt your family because I was too proud to admit that I had made a mistake. Kale drops his weapon and falls to his knees. I have no right to ask, but can you ever forgive me? Looking down at him, this man who had once seemed so powerful and intimidating, Lien feels the last of his anger fade away. Kale isn't his enemy anymore. He's just someone who has been trapped by his own limitations until they nearly destroyed everything good in his life. I already have, Lien says. But Kale, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending that what happened didn't matter. And it doesn't mean I'm coming back. I know, Kale says. I wouldn't ask that of you. You found something here that I could never give you. Something I was too broken to even understand. He looks over at Rael and Isaac. They're your real family now. Yes, they are. Kale nods slowly, then stands and turns to address his pack. We're leaving, he announces. There's no corruption here. No threat to our lands or our people. There's just a family trying to live in peace. and we have no right to disturb that. But Alpha, one of the younger pack members, protests. The elders said dash. The elders were wrong, Kale says firmly. And so was I. We came here looking for monsters and found only love. That should tell us something about our own hearts. As the pack begins to disperse, preparing to return to their own territory, Kale approaches Lien one last time. I want you to know, he says quietly, that seeing you happy, it means everything to me. I destroyed our bond because I thought it would make me stronger, but all it did was make me empty. You deserve the love you found here. You deserve love too, Lien tells him. Real love, with someone who sees all of you and chooses you anyway. But you'll never find it until you stop being afraid of your own heart. Maybe someday, Kale says with a sad smile. But for now, I need to learn how to be the kind of leader my pack actually needs, not the kind I thought they wanted. After the pack is gone, the three of them stand together in the clearing around their estate, processing what has just happened. The confrontation that they had feared would destroy them has instead revealed strengths they didn't know they possessed and confirmed the depth of the bonds between them. That was incredible, Isaac says, his eyes shining with admiration. Lien, I didn't know you could do that with your abilities. Neither did I, Lien admits. I think it was something that only became possible because I had something worth protecting. The power of love, Rael says, wrapping his arms around both Lien and Isaac. It's the oldest magic in existence, and often the strongest. Are they really gone for good? Isaac asks. Or will they change their minds and come back? I don't think they'll be back, Lien says. But even if they are, we'll be ready. We're stronger together than any of us are alone. Speaking of being together, Rael says, his tone becoming more formal, there's something I've been wanting to discuss with both of you. Lien and Isaac look at him curiously. Lien and I have been bonded in all but the most official sense. Rael continues. We love each other. We've committed to building a life together. And we've sworn to protect and care for each other. But there's never been a formal ceremony, a public declaration of our choice. Lien's heart begins to race as he realizes where Rael is going with this. I know that vampire bonding customs are different from werewolf traditions, Rael says, taking Lien's hands in his. But I want everyone to know that what we have is real and permanent. I want to make it official. Are you asking me to marry you? Lien asks, hardly daring to believe it. I'm asking you to be my partner in every sense of the word, Rael says. To bind our lives together formally and completely. To make the family we've created official and recognized. What about me? Isaac asks, and Lien can hear the worry in his voice. Would I still belong here? You would be our son, Rael says firmly. Not by blood, but by choice. If you want that. I want that more than anything, Isaac whispers, tears of joy streaming down his face. Then yes, Lien says, his own eyes filling with tears. Yes, I want to marry you. I want to make this official. I want the whole world to know that we chose each other. The ceremony they plan is unlike anything that has ever been performed before. It combines elements from vampire bonding traditions, werewolf pack customs, and rituals from Isaac's Fey heritage, creating something entirely unique to their family. They hold it at the autumn equinox, when day and night are perfectly balanced, a symbol of the harmony they have found between different worlds and different kinds of love. The ceremony takes place in the clearing around their estate, decorated with flowers and candles and symbols from all their various traditions. There are no guests in the traditional sense. They have no family or friends to invite, no community that fully accepts all of them. But the forest itself seems to approve of their union. Birds gather in the trees to witness their vows, and even some of the forest's more magical residents appear at the edges of the clearing, drawn by the power of the emotions they're sharing. I choose you, Lien says to Rael as they stand together beneath the stars. Not because fate decreed it, but because you showed me what love really looks like. You gave me a home when I had none, purpose when I felt worthless, and a family when I thought I would always be alone. I choose you, Rael replies, because you brought light into a life that had grown dark with loneliness. because you showed me that strength comes in many forms, and the gentlest heart can be the bravest of all. They exchange rings forged from metals that have been touched by both fire and starlight, symbols of the different worlds they come from and the new world they're creating together. Then they turn to Isaac, who is practically vibrating with excitement. And we choose you, they say together, as our son, our family, our heart. We promise to love you, protect you, and support you as you grow into whoever you're meant to become. I choose both of you too, Isaac says solemnly, as my fathers, my family, my home. I promise to love you and help you and make our family proud. The moment the final vows are spoken, something shifts in the air around them. It isn't magic, exactly, but it's power of a different kind, the power of commitment freely given, of love consciously chosen, of family deliberately created. It's done, Rael says softly. We're officially a family now. We were always a family, Lien corrects. Now we just have the paperwork to prove it. That night, as they celebrate their new status with a feast prepared from Isaac's favorite foods and Rael's most prized wines, Lien reflects on the journey that has brought them to this point. A year ago, he had been a broken Omega with no home, no hope, and no future. Now he's a married man with a family he adores and work that fulfills him. Any regrets? Rael asks as they sit together, watching Isaac play with his shadow creatures, their forms dancing in the firelight. Only that it took us so long to make it official, Lien says. Only that I waited so long to find you, Rael replies. But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps we both needed to become who we were meant to be before we could recognize each other. Do you think Isaac feels the same way about belonging here? As if summoned by their conversation, Isaac looks up from his play and smiles at them with pure joy. I can hear you talking about me, he says with the uncanny perception that children sometimes possess. And yes, I feel like I belong here. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Good, Rael says firmly, because you are exactly where you're supposed to be. All of us are. Looking around at their strange, wonderful family, a rejected Omega, an ancient vampire, and a half-fae child, Lien has to agree. They aren't what anyone would have expected, aren't what tradition would have prescribed, but they are exactly what each of them needed. They are home. The months following their official bonding ceremony bring a peace Lien has never known was possible. Their days settle into comfortable rhythms, mornings spent working on translations and research, afternoons exploring the forest with Isaac, evenings gathered around the fire sharing stories and dreams. The estate has become more than just a dwelling. It's a sanctuary where 3 damaged souls have found healing and wholeness together. But their tranquil existence is about to face a new challenge, one that will test the strength of their chosen family in ways they can't imagine. It begins with dreams, visions that seem to come from somewhere beyond the normal world of sleep and waking. At first, Lien dismisses them as simple nightmares brought on by the stress of recent events. But as the visions grow more frequent and more vivid, he begins to suspect they might be something more. In these dreams, he sees other families like theirs, outcasts and misfits who have found each other and built something beautiful together. But they're all in danger, threatened by forces that want to tear apart anything that doesn't fit into traditional categories. The dreams show him a future where love like theirs is celebrated rather than feared, where difference is seen as strength rather than weakness. I think, Lien tells Rael one morning over breakfast, that we're meant to do more than just protect our own family. I think we're meant to help create a world where families like ours can exist openly, without fear. And how do you propose we do that? Rael asks, though there's interest rather than skepticism in his voice. I don't know yet, Lien admits, but I have a feeling we're going to find out soon. The answer comes in the form of a letter delivered by a raven with eyes like stars. The message is brief but significant. Others like you seek sanctuary. Will you provide it? A friend. Attached to the letter is a map showing locations throughout the region where other unconventional families are hiding, vampires who have bonded with werewolves, fae who have found love with humans, beings who have chosen connection over the isolation that their species typically prefer. We could create a network, Lien realizes, excitement building in his voice. A community of communities, all supporting each other. A place where love is more important than species. Isaac adds, looking up from the shadow creatures he's been crafting. Where families get to define themselves. It would be dangerous, Rael warns. Traditional authorities don't like change, and what we're talking about would challenge everything they believe in. Then we'll face that danger together, Lien says firmly. All of us, as a family, as a community, as something new and wonderful that the world has never seen before. And so begins the next chapter of their story, not just as a family trying to survive in a world that doesn't understand them, but as pioneers of a new way of being, creators of a future where love truly knows no boundaries. They are the rejected Omega who found his strength, the ancient vampire who learned to open his heart, and the half-fey child who represents the beautiful possibilities that come from embracing difference. Together, they will build something unprecedented. A community where every family is a chosen family, where every love story is celebrated, and where being different isn't just accepted but cherished. It won't be easy, and it won't be without conflict, but they will face whatever comes with the same courage and devotion that brought them together in the first place. Because in the end, that's what love really is, not the desperate pull of biological imperatives or the comfortable familiarity of sameness, but the conscious, daily choice to stand together against whatever threatens what you've built. And that choice, multiplied across dozens of families, hundreds of love stories, thousands of hearts choosing connection over fear, has the power to change the world. This is their story, a story of rejection transformed into acceptance, exile transformed into homecoming, and fear transformed into the kind of love that makes anything possible. And while their particular tale may be ending, the revolution they've started is just beginning.